It should make us very concerned when we hear the world using the word solution as to fix this big Jewish problem, and they use a word called not final solution, but two-state solution. And let me tell you, we're going to talk about right now why that is very dangerous for Israel. Stay tuned right here.
Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. I'm Luke Hilton here with Joshua Waller. It's Friday, August 5th, and we're happy to have you with us, broadcasting straight from the biblical heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria, where we are bringing you the true and authentic stories of Israel. We're going to talk about a two-state solution today, and the big question is, do the Palestinians actually want their own state? You're going to be surprised by the answer. First, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. Follow us on social media, including Twitter and Facebook. And don't forget, I know we keep harping on it, but you actually have 5 days left to sign up for the 3-week and 5-week Grape Harvest trips. That's a trip to volunteer with us in Israel's heartland this fall. They start September 5th, and the deadline to register for those trips is 5 days away. So go to serveisrael.com, link in the description below if you want to find out more. And don't wait, because the deadline is coming up. So Joe Biden visited Israel recently, and while he was here, he stated that he still supports the two-state solution, as he has for however many years. I lose track of how many years he's actually been a politician because it's so incredibly long. Before I was alive, okay?
We'll discuss my continued support, even though I know it's not in the near term, a two-state solution.
But he said he still supports the two-state solution, but he basically said he sees no viable option to move toward it right now. The Trump administration really focused on finding a peace plan that would work for Israel and the Palestinians. The Biden administration has done zero, except start sending $500 million back to the Palestinians, promise to open the Palestinian consulate in Jerusalem again, things like that, meet with Mahmoud Abbas. But otherwise, they haven't done any work towards coming up with any grand peace plan for the Middle East. Ambassador to Israel Tom Nides recently spoke about the need to keep the vision for a two-state solution alive, and the U.S. State Department also said that it's their official position to support the two-state solution. Basically, not just the United States, but much of the international community is still touting a two-state solution. There's just a little bitty problem. It's not practical, Israel doesn't want it, and the Palestinians don't want it. Josh, what do you think about recent surveys that have kind of been tracking it for several years, and the results might be a little bit surprising?
Yeah, well, first off, Luke, I think that the whole idea that the two-state solution, I mean, really, what in the world? The world has the audacity to still come up with these things. Just take the solution out of it. When the world tries to come up with these solutions for the Jewish problem, here we go again. We're like back in the 1940s with this idea that the Jews have a problem that the whole world needs to fix, right? And the fixing of that problem always leads horrifically, disaster. You just better believe it. If you think I'm going extreme here, just hang tight. We're going to talk about kind of those results of the world and them claiming solutions for this Jewish problem, and how basically, you know what? Saying it's outrageous that the world even comes up with this idea. The fact is that they're telling Israel, you can't by yourself decide your land allotments and your zonings. You're a nation that really can't do that. That's ridiculous. Every nation in the world, other countries give them the rights to decide where they can build, what they can zone their land for. But no, when it comes to Israel, the world says, no, we're not going to allow you to, we're going to pressure you not to build. We're going to be involved with your zonings. The White House has been incessantly just completely invested and on this, that Israel, no, you can't build. We're gonna be involved so much into the nitty-gritty details of this country and where you can and can't build. Even so much so that they're not even agreeing with laws that are in place. So much so that all the prior zonings, they're not even agreeing that Area C of the Oslo Accords that was mandated for Israel to be able to use, that's not even going to be possible because America is saying, no, Israel, you don't have the right to decide what you can do on your own land. That, to me, is horrific. Now, back to the question, Luke. What about the percentages on these? What is Israel saying about this?
To jump in real quick, so what you're saying is that if you're using the word solution as a plan for the Jewish people and the Jewish state, that's probably not a good idea because Adolf Hitler had the final solution that was supposed to kill all of the Jews of the world. The Jewish people didn't have a home for 2,000 years. Now they actually have a little sliver of land in the Middle East, the same land that their forefathers had thousands of years ago. Jewish people lived here during the exile. The last 2,000 years, there was always Jewish people in the land of Israel. And now the world's saying, solution, we should take away some of your land and give it to your enemies that actually state publicly, we want to wipe you off the face of the map and drive you into the sea. Let's give it to them. Probably not a good idea, okay? Let's get into a little bit of recent surveys and poll results. You'll be surprised to find out that Palestinians don't want a two-state solution as much as you think they would. The Israel Democracy Institute carried out a survey recently. The results of who would still support a two-state solution are quite mixed. A minority of Israelis, according to the Israel Democracy Institute, minority of Israelis would still support a two-state solution if it was part of a peace process that was put forward today. A Geneva Initiative survey that asked Israeli citizens if they support or oppose a reopening of negotiations with the Palestinians on the basis of a two-state solution, they had about 51% in favor. It's basically like, do you support reopening negotiations with the Palestinians with like two-state solution as part of that? Obviously, like a lot of people still say yes because they know we have a problem. We don't know what the solution is, but we know we need to fix this problem. Okay, let's get into some numbers. So, Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research as of December 2021, this is the Palestinians, 39% favor a two-state solution, 59% oppose. This is compared to the same survey in 2018, where 46% of the Palestinians favored a two-state solution. So from 2018 to 2021, 3 years later, you have a drop down to 39%. So every year, support for the two-state solution amongst the Palestinians themselves is dropping and dropping very fast. Now, support for a one-state solution with Palestinians and Israelis, 2018, it was 9%. Today, it's 29%. One state being that this means that today, 29% of Israelis and Palestinians support the idea of living together inside the state of Israel. Basically, what it comes down to their lives, Palestinians are starting to realize, if I want to have a good life, and if I want to have a job, and if I want to support my family, if I want to be able to travel, you know, Israel is looking a whole lot better than what my own Palestinian Authority has been offering for the past 30 years, which is violence and terrorism and a poor economy and corruption and putting all our money to, you know, terrorists that are sitting in Israeli prisons. So more and more of them are starting to understand and support the idea of maybe actually being a part of Israel one day.
Luke, I've got one problem with these stats. My big issue here with these stats is these stats are showing, and it may look like it's slowly dropping, but there is a major issue here. There's a big difference between Israelis that are looking to go to the negotiating table on the idea of creating two states, and the Arab population that is saying the same thing. The problem is these 29% that are saying they would like to, it's a means to an end, and their end goal, every one of them, even if they see a two-state solution as like a stepping stone towards full and 100% Judenrein zone, right? Jews out, and I'm saying much of these percentages would include this idea that it's one step closer to establishing an Arab state, a Palestinian state on this Israeli holy ground. That's a big difference in the two. Even though these stats are true, you're going to have Arabs that are saying, and there is going to be a percentage of them that say, no, for sure, we don't want to be ruled by Arab terrorist groups. We're much happier being ruled by Israel. We're the most peaceful Arab run area in the world. They're more safe, they're more secure, better business opportunities. I mean, there's just a lot there that Israel providing that security covering. Now, the end goal, they're not allowed to say what I just said. They're secure, they're safer, they're better, they have better rights, they have more, the best lives in the Arab world. Still underneath that, there's a religious holy war going on, and they want to take over all of Israel. So the stats may be a little bit confusing.
Not 100%. I disagree. Not 100%. There's a lot of good Arabs that would be happy to live in peaceful relations with Israel. But I do agree, a lot of them, would have that underlying factor that, yes, we could live in Israel, but eventually we still want to wipe the Jews off the face of the map. And that's why you've seen so much terrorism inside Tel Aviv and inside Haifa and inside Bnei Brak. Like, these are Israeli cities on the coastline, not inside the West Bank, but Israeli cities. You have all this terrorism happening because a lot of Israeli Arab citizens
Let me put it in perspective.
Still support terrorism.
Let me put it in perspective. Basically, every mayor that you go to into their offices, you're going to find the map, and I've said this multiple times, but you guys got to get this. The leaders are on one track. They're on a track to establish facts on the ground, a Palestinian state, not inside of what the Western world has deemed a two-state solution zones, right? No, they're not saying that. They're saying from the river to the sea. This is what the leadership is pushing towards. Maybe there's some laymen out there that just saying, hey, we want peace, and I like my job, and I want to live securely. No, the leaders are going full-fledged, with an exception. I know of one leader down in Hebron that's saying otherwise. That he is part of that 9% that you mentioned, saying, no, we need a Jewish sovereign state over the whole thing, and we want to submit to that because it's much better for us. Yes, there are a few of those. But in comparison, the leadership of the world, go to any mayor's office around Judea and Samaria, and even outside of Judea and Samaria in the Arab leadership, and you're going to find one big map of Israel, and it all says Palestine. Get that very clear.
Okay, guys, so we have something special for you. This is a video that is not even released publicly yet, and it's about our tree planting operation that's going to be happening starting 2 months from now. It's super exciting. This video, you're going to be very interested and entertained a little bit. So watch our brand new Greening Israel video right now.
Israel has rocks, a lot of rocks.
And what you might not know is there used to be forest here. The Bible talks about them.
Over the last 2,000 years, invader after invader has come through and destroyed the land, cut down the trees, and left the country desolate and barren.
Today, we're planting trees in Israel's biblical heartland to reverse centuries of desolation and barrenness.
We know you're probably asking, aren't there a lot of people planting trees in Israel? The short answer is yes.
The complicated answer is, well, more complicated. Let me break it down for you. A, most people are not planting indigenous trees. B, most are not using irrigation, or if they do, not properly. And C, most importantly, hardly anyone is planting trees in Judea and Samaria.
Our Greening Israel project is focused on all those things. We're planting more than 20 varieties of trees that were indigenous to this area 2,000 years ago. We have a unique watering system that has successfully been used in the Sahara Desert. And we're planting with small farmers and in Jewish communities all across Israel's biblical heartland.
The process of planting a tree is simple. First, go to greeningisrael.com and make a $25 donation. Then, we'll start your tree at the greenhouse. And within just a few months, we'll plant your tree at one of our sites in Israel's heartland.
Here's what it looks like when we go to plant your tree. First, we clear the area of rocks and thorn bushes. Then we dig a hole. Next, we plant your tree. Then we put this really cool water bucket, including a protective sleeve, over the top of the tree. Then we fill it up with water. And we come back periodically to check on your tree to make sure it's thriving.
Plant a tree today by going to greeningisrael.com and be a part of seeing the land of Israel come back to life.
Oh! Whew! Wondering who we are? We're Hayvel, a nonprofit Christian organization that has been working in Israel's heartland for the last 18 years.
During that time, we've brought more than 3,000 volunteers from over 30 countries to serve Israel's farmers.
We've also planted nearly 40,000 trees and vines in Judea and Samaria. That's a lot. Yeah, a lot. By planting a tree in Israel's heartland, you can directly fulfill biblical prophecy.
Instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress tree, and instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle. Right now, Israel's heartland is rocky, barren, and desolate. With your help, however, the forest will burst into life, just like the prophets foretold.
So plant a tree that will last for generations, restore Israel's biblical heartland, and bring the land of Israel back to life.
Go to greeningisrael.com today.
So if you guys are interested in planting a tree in the land of Israel, we're actually starting 2 months from now, beginning of October 2022. And that's because the Shemitah, which is the 7th year sabbatical, is coming to a close. Trees cannot be planted during the Shemitah, but October 2022, the Shemitah 7th year sabbatical is over, and that's when we're going to be planting 3,000 trees. But we need your help. We can't do it without your help. It's $25 to not only plant a tree, but care for the tree, special watering system, irrigation, mulch, cages, everything that the tree needs. We care for it. It's not just sticking a tree in the ground, guys. These are forests that you're going to be able to come 10 years from now and enjoy. It's going to last for generations to come. Go to greeningisrael.com, link in the description below, and make sure that your tree gets planted in the heartland of Israel today. Well, 2 months from now starting, but we have to get going right now, because if we don't get these trees funded, we won't be able to plant 3,000 trees in October and November this year. greeningisrael.com.
Okay, guys, you may think it's outlandish that I would equate the two-state solution with Hitler's final solution, but let me just tell you why I do. Well, the fact is that since the Oslo Accords, when this two-state solution was created in 1993, what have we seen in Israel? It's been the number one most bloody thing across the board in Israel, buses blowing up. And what was the cause of it? Well, the cause was exactly this, the two-state solution. The world saying this is the boundaries, causing strife inside of this area of Judea and Samaria. Don't be mistaken. This is no solution for Israel. We mentioned it earlier. No Israeli very few Israelis accept it. It's not the majority idea here. It's not accepted in Israel. And it's just a no-go. It's a no-go. It's impossible, but yet the world keeps treating this idea as though it is some solution when it absolutely 100% is no solution. No solution whatsoever. Just to mention, we had the Second Intifada, wars with Gaza, wars with Lebanon, a constant strife and struggle all over. And what is even the whole Arab world right now? We'll make peace with you if you what? If you will make a Arab state inside of your area, inside of hack off all the Oslo Accord agreements, the area A, B, and C. They've already given A, and B to the Arabs. Go ahead and give C to the Arabs as well. Lose all your strategic, incredibly important areas for your military. Give away the mountain zone looking over the Ben Gurion airport to terrorists, the same terrorists that are in Gaza that are shooting rockets. Go ahead and give them the mountain range looking over the Ben Gurion Airport and the 85% of the Israeli population living on the coast. And that's why I'm saying that this is incredibly dangerous to the life and soul of Israel. And do not get it mistaken. If you're sitting there saying, yes, a two-state solution is okay and the best thing for Israel, you're going to be agreeing with a Hitler-like solution for the Jewish problem. And let me tell you, that is evil, and it should not be tolerated, and it will mean death to many thousands of Israelis. You cannot make this kind of assumption that this will bring peace. It will bring no peace. It will only cause more and more bloodshed. Get that very clear.
You guys should know, too, that the Oslo Accords started in 1993. And that's really when the two-state solution idea was born. But before that, it wasn't like there was 100% peace and there was still violence and some terrorism and things like that. But it was actually a lot better than than after the Oslo Accords. Basically, there was some coexistence. And we know people that were here in the 1970s and 1980s. They can show you pictures and videos and stories of them interacting with their Arab neighbors. There was a lot of peace that was going on. Oslo Accords happened 1993. Two-state solution was born, and there's just been violence, intifadas, terrorism, bus bombings, you name it.
Luke, let me butt in here. Even settlements were founded with the appreciation and the applause of the Arab neighbors. I know neighbors here of communities that the local sheiks and Arab leaders were applauding and celebrating Jewish settlement coming into the area. It was bringing life and business and more prosperity to the region. Now, take that with what's happening today. Totally different.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could, if we could let out a little dirty secret, you could just kind of blame the rest of the world for coming in and telling the Palestinians that all of a sudden they needed to hate Israel. Not all their fault, but, the international community definitely has not helped because it sounded really good. The two-state solution on paper, it sounded like a really good idea. It's two peoples coming together, working together in peace with the same values, and we can live side by side in peace and harmony. What actually happened? The Second Intifada happened. Thousands of Jews were killed. Wars with Gaza. Tens of thousands, nearly, of rockets being shot from Gaza, countless rounds of terrorist attacks. The PA, Palestinian Authority, was supposed to be an interim government that would then lead for a permanent Palestinian government. That never happened. The PA is still functioning, not functioning very well. They were supposed to keep the peace with their own people, with their own security forces. They were supposed to keep their own people from committing terrorist attacks. What's actually happening? A lot of the PA security forces are part of terrorist attacks against Israel. They have the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which is actually like the military wing of Fatah, and Fatah controls the PA. So they're
Biden supports
working in that.
The PA. How about that?
The PA security forces, a lot of them were trained by the U.S.
Yeah.
Get that. But now the PA is completely corrupt. They haven't held elections in more than 12 years, I think. So Mahmoud Abbas is like way, way, way over his term limits. They just funnel money into their own pockets, and they funnel money into the hundreds, if not thousands, of terrorists that are sitting in Israeli prisons, and they don't funnel into their own people. Billions of dollars have been poured into the Palestinians, and what do they have to show for it? Absolutely nothing. Not only that, they're inciting terrorism, they're teaching terrorism, they're funding terrorism, and they're educating. It's in their curriculums, in their schools. There's 100,000 children in Gaza right now that are in summer camp. And what are they learning in summer camp? Terrorism and violence against Israel. So the big question is, how could the two-state solution not be dead, and how could anyone actually still be advocating for it, much less the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, and our President, Joe Biden? So the Palestinians, the other premise of the two-state solution is that they would want to live inside the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, alongside Israel. And as we were mentioning before, that's 100% not the case, and they haven't even tried to hide it. They don't want Judea and Samaria. They don't want the Gaza Strip. They want that. They do want those places along with the rest of Israel. But they'll never and have never agreed to it. They've been offered it multiple times. They'll never agree to the West Bank or the Gaza Strip as their own state living alongside Israel. Because like you said, all of their maps are the entire state of Israel with Palestine. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And whenever you see like their TV programs, it's all about taking back Haifa and taking back Tel Aviv and taking back Netanya. Okay, so they don't want Judea and Samaria. They want the entire land of Israel.
Luke, I want to make one final point here before we close the show, and that is that Israel is one of the strongest militaries in the world. I think it ranked way up there, 10, something like that, in the world, like incredibly strong. And people are like, so why this incredibly advanced, incredibly strong military? Let me tell you something. They could take care of their neighborhood just fine. Again, why are we blaming the international community? Luke, you mentioned the international community being the big problem. Well, that is true. And I want to say radical Islam is also a problem, but it's not the biggest problem because Israel can handle that. Israel could take care of this neighborhood and all of its neighbors just fine. Just the rest of the world support Israel's attack against terrorism, right? If we had America fully backing Israel, let me tell you, this would be a different neighborhood. We could align, this place would be totally different, and that's why we're placing the sole responsibility on the international community. Let's back Israel, and let's back Israel's stance against terrorism. Let's support Israel to fight terrorism. There's a whole terror break right here. The IDF is coming into the Samaria region right now and busting terror gangs and kicking them out of the region. Let's support that. All right? And that's the reason why the international community has such an important role in supporting Israel.
Guys, in conclusion, well, first of all, like Josh mentioned, the two-state solution, that kind of solution is not good for the Jewish people, because actually what the Palestinian Authority wants and the corrupt government is the two-state solution that will wipe the Jews off the face of the Israel map so that it can then become the Palestine map. But every year, on a practical level, the Palestinians want their own state less and less, and they begin to see the benefits of living inside of a Jewish democratic nation. Practically speaking, a two-state solution is never going to be possible. The PA has never shown that they even wanted the two-state solution, instead choosing to teach their people that they want to wipe the Jewish nation off the face of the map. That's what's happening. That's what's important. That's what you need to know. And when you read the Associated Press and Reuters and these other left-wing major news networks, because that's what I've been reading today, don't believe it when they tell these lies about Israel and how they're oppressing the Palestinians and occupying the West Bank. So guys, it's important for you to know the truth. Don't forget to plant your tree. Go to greeningisrael.com. You need to go today. It's only $25 to plant a tree in the land of Israel. We'll be starting October 1st. We now have videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of those. Let us know what you think about the two-state solution in the comments below. Tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We'll be back 3 times a week and sometimes more with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.